But before I get too into it, my name's Jacob. Either one is fine. I am the collections coordinator and the educator over on Bald Head Island on the other side of the Cape Fear River from where we are right now. Quite a few different aspects of history that we talk about on Bald Head Island, from pirates, right, to the American Revolution. Obviously, we talk a lot about lighthouses, lighthouse technology, Fresnel lenses, the American Civil War, as well as the United States Life Saving Services, and that is what I'm here to talk about today, the USLSS. It was founded in the 1870s, and their job was exactly as it sounds, right? It was to save people's lives from sinking on shipwrecks. Two kind of different ways that they did it. The first way was the Lyle gun. So picture like a cannon about up to my knee. It's a small little bronze cannon, and a crew which consisted of 7 surfmen. They were only there during hurricane season, which is roughly September through April. 7 surfmen and the keeper of the station, who was there year-round, and the keeper got to have his family there too, so a little added benefit, right? The luxury of having your family with you. But anyway, so John Watts was the keeper, and what they do is they drag that cannon out there, and they'd fire a projectile over a sinking ship. They're not trying to sink the ship that's already sinking, right? They're going to fire a projectile over it, because attached to the back of that projectile is a rope. So the idea was they'd fire it over, so anyone who's still on board that vessel can grab the rope and then tether it to the tallest thing that's still remaining, maybe a mast, maybe a jib boom, something like that, right? And then meanwhile, back on the beach, our lifesavers are using a series of ropes and pulleys and lines to send out the breeches buoys, which is a life ring with pants sewn into it. So the idea was they send this thing out onto the boat, and then each individual sailor would then hop in to the breeches buoys and ride it like a zip line to the beach. Ding! And then they'd send it back on out there, and the next guy would hop in and ride it like a zip line to the beach. Ding! Right? Seems a little silly, but it was quite effective. Original kind of ways that they were doing it involved dragging someone with a rope tied around their waist like 300 yards back to the beach. Turns out people didn't really like being dragged through the surf to get back to that beach, right? But the one problem with it, the range was only about 450, maybe 500 yards, depending on conditions. Anything further than that, they had to do the traditional method, which is pile your surfmen into a surf boat, which is a 27-foot long, 1,000-pound oar-powered boat, and start to row. And that is what John L. Watts and his crew had to do October 14th, 1893, when they spotted the Charles C. Dame. Was a small vessel that ran aground on the Frying Pan Shoals 8 miles out there, right? Way too far for the Lyle gun. Before they started the row, they communicated to the Oak Island Life Saving Station using these gigantic signal flags, and they asked Oak Island, can you help us with this rescue, right? Oak Island tried not once but twice to launch their surf boat. After the second time, they realized it wasn't working, so they went and they found a tugboat captain, and they asked him, can you tug our lifeboat, our surf boat, out past those main breakers so we can help with this rescue mission? Supposedly, the tugboat captain points to the ocean and says, that ocean? Absolutely not, right? Because this is the tail end of what we believe was a Category 3 hurricane based off of those wind records, right? So they can't launch their boat, but our Cape Fear crew successfully can. They all pile into the boat. Each surfman's going to have like their backs to the waves like that, and then the keeper is at the back of the boat with a 20-foot long steering oar, who's just like pushing and pulling, trying to keep them going in the general direction out to that boat. 8 is kind of our lucky number here today. As I mentioned, it was 8 miles out there. Guess how many hours it took them to row to get to the Dame? 8 hours. 8 hours of rowing. Eventually they get out there. They get all 8 survivors off the Charles C. Dame onto their surf boat, row back to shore. Not quite as long on the way back to shore, only 4 hours of rowing to get back to the beach for a total rescue mission of 12 hours. And that's what they did. And I imagine once or twice they thought about their own motto, which kind of dates back to this old keeper with this young surfman. And, they're looking at this shipwreck, and supposedly the young surfman goes to the keeper and says, sir, do you think we'll come back alive? And then the keeper takes out this manual and skims it and looks all around and flips all through and says, you know what, son? There's nothing in here that says says we come back alive. All it says is we have to go out. And that kind of became their motto. You don't always come back in, but you always go out. And that's what they continued to do up until they're brought underneath the umbrella of the United States Coast Guard in about 1915. Meanwhile, our guy right over here, John L. Watts, he dies of a heart attack, still posted on Bald Head Island, still the keeper of the USLSS station over there in 1911. Thank you everyone for coming. Any questions here? All right, good stuff.